All right, so picture this, you're out on the road, maybe exploring some amazing landscape, and your stomach starts rumbling, and you're
Yeah.
miles from any restaurants. And honestly, those prepackaged camping meals get old after a while.
Yeah, for sure. You want that home cooked meal even when you're on the road.
Right, exactly. And that's where our source material for today comes in, an article by Darren at the odysseycamper.com travel blog.
Okay.
He's all about making, great food on the road, but get this, he's using a crock pot
Oh,
to do it, and he's even baking bread in his camper van.
really? That's pretty interesting because usually we think of crock pots for like hearty stews and things like that.
I know, I was surprised too.
Yeah.
A crock pot in a van. But it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
When you think about efficiency. And Darren even mentions in his blog post that he doesn't cook in his van every day, but when he does it, the crock pot is his go-to.
It's a really good solution if you think about it, especially for van life where you have limited power. Crockpots are super energy efficient, and you can even find 12V models if you're going off-grid with solar.
So practical and delicious.
Yeah.
Now, Darren isn't just making stews in his crock pot. He mentions making quiches and sauces.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing how versatile they can be.
Yeah, it really changes what we think about van life cooking.
It does.
You don't have to just eat prepackaged meals
Yeah.
or simple things. You can really expand the horizons there.
And speaking of expanding horizons,
Yeah.
he has this no-knead bread recipe
Okay.
that he shares, and he raves about how the aroma fills his van while it's baking.
Oh.
Makes it feel like home.
Yeah, for sure. And no need is key for a van too, right?
Yes,
You don't have a lot of space.
exactly.
You don't want to be bringing a bunch of equipment.
No. And his recipe is really simple.
Mm-hmm.
3 cups flour, 2 teaspoons of salt, 3/4 teaspoon active dry yeast, and 1.5 cups of tepid water.
Right.
And he even recommends pre-mixing the dry ingredients before you hit the road so you save time.
That's a good tip, especially if you're limited on space. You don't want a bunch of, containers and stuff.
Exactly. And then he says to use food service gloves for kneading.
Okay.
So that keeps your hands clean in that compact van.
Makes sense.
And then you just pop that dough right into the crock pot. No need to let it rise beforehand. Although he does mention letting it sit for an hour if you want a fluffier loaf.
Oh. Okay, so there's some options there.
There are options. And then one thing to keep in mind, he says, is the size of your crock pot.
Yeah.
Darren uses a 1.5 quart model, which is perfect for this recipe.
Yeah.
But if yours is larger, make sure to check the bread after an hour and then every 20 minutes or so to make sure it doesn't overcook.
That's a good tip.
And he even says if you want to spice things up a bit, add a 1/4 cup of apples or other fruit to the mix. But if you do that, reduce the water a little bit just to maintain the right consistency.
Yeah, that makes sense. You'd have to adjust the liquid content.
Yeah. And he says a sprinkle of Italian seasoning or cinnamon can also add a delicious twist.
Oh, wow. So you can really make it your own.
You can, it's amazing how a few simple ingredients can change a basic bread recipe into something really special.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got our dough in the crock pot. The aroma is starting to fill the van.
Right.
How do we know when it's actually done?
Well, I mean, obviously, if it smells like bread, that's a good sign, but
That's true.
he recommends checking the internal temperature you want to get to 195 degrees.
Okay.
And of course, the top shouldn't be doughy anymore, but he actually has another trick,
Oh,
which I love. He stores the bread in the same cooking bag he used in the crock pot.
oh, really?
Yeah.
That's so smart.
Keeps it fresh, reduces waste.
I love these kinds of tips.
Yeah, me too.
It's all about being resourceful.
Absolutely. And I feel like it speaks to a larger trend that we're seeing.
What's
This desire for simpler, more sustainable living.
Oh, yeah.
Van life, tiny homes, off-grid adventures.
Yeah.
It's all about minimizing our footprint, but maximizing our experiences.
It's about freedom too, right?
Exactly.
The freedom to explore, to work remotely, to live life on your own terms.
Yeah, and cooking delicious, healthy meals wherever you go is a huge part of that.
It is.
It's about reclaiming that connection to food and cooking even when you're on the move.
I like that. And a crock pot really allows you to do that.
It does.
So for those listening who are thinking, okay, I'm sold, I need to try this crock pot thing.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them?
I would say don't be afraid to experiment.
Okay.
Crockpot cooking is very forgiving. Start with simple recipes, adapt them to your crockpot, and see what works for you.
It's like a slow motion culinary adventure.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of simple ingredients. A few staples, a little creativity, and your trusty crockpot can create amazing meals on the road.
Now, speaking of being on the road, I imagine that cooking in a van, even with a crock pot, can be challenging
Yeah.
with the limited space. Any tips for making the most of it?
Organization is key, I would say.
Okay.
Think stackable containers, collapsible bowls, multi-purpose tools.
Okay.
Anything that saves space is your friend.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And plan your meals ahead of time.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
That helps minimize waste and ensures that you have everything you need on hand.
Every little bit counts.
It does, especially when you're living in a van.
Yeah, and a cleanup must be a breeze with the crock pot, especially if you're using those liners.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So if we had to sum up the core takeaways from Darren's crockpot wisdom, what would they be?
I would say first, embrace the versatility.
Okay.
Don't limit yourself to just stews, you know?
Yeah.
Explore those possibilities of baking, roasting, even creating those gourmet-inspired dishes.
Yeah. And remember that energy efficiency is a huge plus, especially for van life.
For sure.
You can create delicious meals without draining your battery.
Right. And most importantly, I think just remember that cooking in your camper van can be a truly rewarding experience. It connects you to your food, it allows you to get creative with limited resources, and it creates those moments of culinary satisfaction that make van life so special.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap things up, I have to ask,
Okay.
have you ever tried crockpot cooking in a camper van or any other unconventional setting?
I haven't personally had the pleasure of van life yet,
Oh.
but I did once make a really delicious chili when I was camping in a remote cabin with no electricity.
Really?
Yeah, I used a small propane burner to power my crock pot.
That's awesome.
It was a game changer.
It proves that with a bit of ingenuity, you can enjoy home-cooked meals wherever your adventures take you.
Absolutely. And I bet our listeners have some incredible stories and recipes that they've cooked up in their vans.
I'm sure they do. So if you have a favorite crockpot recipe or a memorable cooking experience from your travels, share your culinary triumphs with us on social media.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's not just about the destination. It's about the journey and the experiences we create along the way.
Now, that's a story worth sharing. And speaking of stories, let's give a shout out to Darren from odysseycamper.com for sharing his crockpot wisdom with us.
Yeah, definitely. And don't forget to check out his website, odysseycamper.com, or his YouTube channel, Odyssey Camper, for more photos and videos. And you can get those detailed instructions for the no-knead bread recipe there.
Right. You can see his setup in action. And to all of our listeners out there, whether you're a seasoned van lifer or just thinking about hitting the open road, we hope this episode has gotten you thinking about all the possibilities.
Yeah, happy travels, happy cooking, and may your crock pots always be full of delicious adventures.
I like that. And we'll see you on our next deep dive.